Why did the mountains feel so still that night? Why did the silence press down heavier than the weight of their gear? Lieutenant Commander Phoenix Drake asked himself those questions as his boots crunched lightly over the rocks of northern Syria. Every step felt like it echoed too loudly, like something was listening, waiting. The six-man SEAL team moved with the kind of discipline that comes only from years of training, but even in silence, doubts can scream. The mission had seemed simple enough. In, out, extraction. Another operation. Another night in hostile country. And yet, something was wrong. Chief Atlas Gray had muttered it back in Virginia Beach before Wheels Up. Intel's too thin, changes too fast, doesn't smell right. Gray was the kind of man who had lived through more firefights than most would survive in their nightmares. When he said he felt a mission was off, people listened. Drake had heard him, but orders were orders. And orders had brought them here to the Kurdish borderlands, where fighters hid among shadows, where ambushes were older than the stone hills themselves. Jackson Vale, the comms man, tapped his headset as signals flickered across his display. Phoenix, comm traffic is dirty. Too many pings. This isn't light resistance. I'm reading a hell of a lot more. His voice stayed low, controlled. But his eyes told another story, fear buried under professionalism. Drake raised his hand. The team froze. Night vision scopes scanned ridgelines where pale rocks gleamed under a thin wash of moonlight. And there in the darkness, movement. Too many silhouettes. Too much coordination. It hit like a fist to the chest. The building up ahead wasn't a safe house, not a hideout for an asset. It was fortified, guarded, waiting for them. "This is wrong," Damon Fields, their medic, breathed. His words were more than observation, they were prophecy. Seconds later, voices carried through the night. Orders barked in a foreign tongue, a net tightening around them. Enemy fighters sliding into overwatch positions. The trap had already sprung. Drake's throat mic clicked. Circles closing, prepare to fight. The SEALs knew what that meant. No rescue, no backup. Their comms were jammed, their extraction compromised. The 6 of them against 40, maybe more. Ammunition low, no terrain advantage. 10 minutes at best before they'd be overrun. Fields' hands hovered over his kit, not because he doubted himself, but because he knew what little he carried would never be enough. Vale slammed his comms device, trying desperately to break through the static. Nothing but silence. Gray's face hardened in the pale glow of his optics. He'd seen it before, missions that turned from precise execution to pure survival. "We make our stand," Drake said, the words flat, cold. "The decision no leader wants to speak but trains for every day. No surrender, no capture, maximum cost." Around the rocky depression where they dug in, enemy gunfire cracked, shattering the silence. Then came the sniper rounds, sharp and controlled, designed not to kill but to pin. Whoever was running this ambush knew SEAL tactics, knew how to suffocate them before the final strike. Then it came, a voice, not from their comms, not from the ridges, from the night itself, cutting through the dark with taunting confidence. "Unknown shooter, identify yourself," the accent-tinged English called. "Surrender your weapons, and you will be treated according to the laws of war." A lie, everyone knew it. Surrender wasn't survival here, it was torture, propaganda, execution. Drake clenched his jaw, whispering through the mic, "Ignore it, we fight." The team nodded, no hesitation. They checked their last magazines, grenades within reach. Each man knew his role. Each man knew this was it. And then the shot. It came from nowhere, a thunderclap in the still air. A single bullet, clean and precise, tearing through the night and dropping an enemy fighter before he even hit the ground. Then another shot. And another. Panic rose from the ridges. Enemy voices shouted in confusion, breaking formation. Vale looked up sharply. "Phoenix, that wasn't them. That wasn't us either." The sniper fire pinning them down stopped. The silence returned, but it wasn't still anymore. It was alive, charged. Someone else was here, someone who could see everything. Drake squinted through his scope. Muzzle flashes flickered from positions that hadn't been occupied seconds before, but instead of fire raining down on them, those shots were eliminating threats. Systematic. Surgical. Someone was dismantling the ambush piece by piece, like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. Then a voice, calm, professional American. "Phoenix, this is an unknown friendly. Stay in position. Extraction in progress." Every SEAL froze. That wasn't possible. Their comms were encrypted, locked down tighter than steel. No one could break into their channel. No one, unless they were inside something far bigger than this battlefield. "Who the hell is she?" Vale whispered. The voice again, measured, unfaltering. "Tango down Northwest Ridge, moving to secondary targets." Drake's instincts screamed against trusting a ghost, yet he couldn't deny what his scope revealed. Enemies who'd been moving confidently a moment ago were falling. Not at random, with intent. Whoever she was, she understood battlefield anatomy like it was her own body. She wasn't just killing, she was unraveling the enemy's command structure. A small package landed in their perimeter, silent and precise. Gray caught it, his eyes narrowing. Inside, fresh mags, trauma gear, encrypted comm units. Not standard issue, experimental, advanced beyond anything they'd seen. Fields lifted a vial from the kit, stunned. "These aren't even out of trials. This stuff shouldn't exist yet." Drake's mic crackled. "Unknown friendly, identify." The pause stretched long enough for another enemy squad to vanish under her fire. Finally, the voice returned, calm, steady, almost amused. "Call me Raven." Drake swallowed hard. Whoever she was, she had just changed everything. But beneath the relief of survival, a deeper unease twisted through him. How had she known they were walking into a trap? How had she tracked them here, cut into their comms, dropped supplies they didn't even know they'd need? It was a question he wouldn't ask yet, because right now, in the thin light before dawn, all that mattered was that someone out there, someone they didn't know, had decided they would live. And yet, even in survival, something heavier lingered. If Raven could see the whole battlefield with such clarity, maybe she'd also seen what they hadn't dared admit. That this wasn't just an ambush. It was betrayal. What kind of soldier moves like that? What kind of person threads through the battlefield unseen, striking with precision so flawless it feels less like combat and more like inevitability? Phoenix Drake had seen elite operators, the best of the best, but nothing like her. Through his scope, he watched enemy lines collapse without chaos, as though someone was pulling threads from a web until it fell apart in silence. "Tango down, Overwatch neutralized," Raven's voice said, crisp, exact. There was no breathless strain, no urgency, just calm execution like she'd already fought this battle 100 times before. Gray shifted beside Drake, eyes wide behind his NVGs. She's not shooting blind. She's reading the fight like she's already inside their playbook. Vale tapped furiously at his comms, tracing the ghost signal. "Phoenix, she's not broadcasting from any fixed point. Signal's mobile. She's moving faster than—" He cut himself off, disbelief curling his tone. "I can't track her. She's everywhere at once." That was impossible, and yet there she was. Another shot cracked. This time, it wasn't just elimination. It was disruption. A forward observer, the kind of man who coordinated mortars, dropped lifeless. Seconds later, Drake heard the muffled thump of explosives not being fired, but detonating in their own pit. She had cut the enemy's eyes and silenced their fire before it even began. Fields ducked lower as dust showered over them. His medic's voice was quiet, uneasy. "Commander, she's not just helping us. She's conducting a whole operation around us, like we're the side mission." And then came the package. It landed soft as a feather, wrapped in matte fabric. Vale tore it open, and for the second time that night, silence fell among them. Inside lay magazines preloaded with custom rounds, ammunition optimized for their exact weapons, Medical supplies tuned not just for trauma, but for battlefield triage protocols Fields had only read about in classified journals. Even a comms unit Vale had never seen before. He ran his hand across it, eyes flicking. This encryption, Phoenix, this isn't ours. This is 5 years ahead of anything we've got. Drake stared at it, unsettled. How does she know exactly what we need? As if on cue, Raven's voice returned. Negative on ammunition concerns. Your resupply is complete. Phoenix, focus on identifying their command element. Collapse the head, the body falls. She knew their call signs. She knew their ammo count. She even knew their needs before they'd spoken them. Drake felt a chill beneath his gear. Who the hell was this woman? Then the sound changed. Rotor blades, heavy. The kind of pounding that made your stomach sink even before your mind caught up. Vale's scanner confirmed it. Enemy Hinds inbound. 2 gunships closing fast. Gray swore under his breath. Against 40 ground troops, survival had been a coin toss. Against Hind helicopters, it was suicide. Drake leaned into his mic, voice sharp. Unknown Raven, we cannot engage aircraft with current loadout. Immediate extraction or fire support required. Her reply was the same calm steel. Understood, adjusting tactical priorities. Instead of aiming skyward, Raven shifted her hunt. Drake watched through the scope as she cut down spotters, communication relays, even the fuel handlers they hadn't known were hidden in the hills. Suddenly, the gunships faltered, flying blind, stripped of their coordination. One pilot veered off course. Another circled, unwilling to fire without ground confirmation, and just as quickly, salvation came. Phoenix, green smoke. Friendly aviation inbound in 90 seconds. Vale blinked, stunned. She just called in air support, but Phoenix, we've been dark for hours. No one should even know where we are. And yet, a minute later, 2 Apache crested the ridge like hawks. Their hellfires roared, chewing through the Hinds until the night sky glowed with fire. A Blackhawk thundered down in the valley below, green smoke marking its landing zone. Drake signaled his men. Move. Extraction now. They sprinted, legs burning, hearts pounding. But even as they boarded, Drake couldn't let go of the unease. He keyed his mic one last time. Raven, request rendezvous. You earned the ride. For the first time, her voice faltered, not in strength but in distance. Negative, different mission parameters. Stay safe, Phoenix. The Blackhawk lifted, dust whipped against their helmets, and there, far across the ridge, barely visible in the dawn, a lone figure stood, watching, then gone. On the ride back, no one spoke at first. Vale worked furiously on the comms device she'd given them, trying to pry into its secrets. Phoenix, this gear isn't in any military database. It's built for a war we haven't fought yet. Gray inspected the ammo. Not factory rounds. These are custom loads, no flash, extreme accuracy. Someone built them for one shooter, not an army. Fields turned over the medical supplies, his voice quiet. This isn't for the wounded. This is for survivors. Whoever she is, she wanted us to live. Hours later, at Andrews Air Force Base, the debriefing began. Captain Wade sat stiff, his jaw clenched. Major Sage Reeves from Naval Intelligence leaned forward, eyes like blades. Let me understand, Wade said, tapping his notes. An unidentified individual with access to your encrypted comms, advanced gear, and coordination with air assets, we never deployed, single-handedly eliminated 40 enemy fighters and secured your extraction. Drake held his ground. Yes, sir, that's correct. Reeves' tone was sharper, and she identified herself only as Raven. No rank, no unit, no codes. Correct. They studied him, doubt heavy in the room. The team placed Raven's gear on the table. Reeves gestured at it, her voice low. This doesn't exist. Not legally. Not within any contractor we know. Gray's gravel voice cut through. Ma'am, with respect, that gear saved our lives. I don't care where it came from. But Reeves wasn't done. She slid satellite photos across the table. These are from 6 hours before your insertion. Notice anything? Vale leaned closer, then froze. That's a vehicle, not on our intel photos, and these positions, his stomach sank. Those are Overwatch nests, perfect angles on our route. Reeves folded her hands. Exactly. Someone with access to your mission planning prepositioned assets in that area. Either Raven was part of the trap, or she was conducting unauthorized surveillance. Field's voice broke the tension. If she was part of the trap, why save us? Why expose herself? Reeves' answer was ice. Unless saving you served a larger purpose we don't yet understand. The silence in that room wasn't just suspicion. It was something deeper, betrayal. Because if Raven had known about the trap, then someone inside their own house had sold them out. Drake's gut twisted as Reeves continued. Similar incidents have been reported by other teams in the last 6 months. Ambushes, compromised missions, rescues by unknowns. Gray muttered half to himself. So she's not a ghost, she's a pattern. Wade leaned in, his voice grim. Here, what we know. Your intel was compromised. The asset you were sent to extract either never existed or was bait. Someone wanted your team gone, and they used our own operational planning to do it. Drake asked the question he already dreaded. Inside job. Wade didn't blink. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you facts. Someone at a high level fed your mission into enemy hands. And there it was, not just betrayal by the enemy, betrayal from within. As they left the room, Drake felt the weight press harder than his gear ever had. Vale finally said what they were all thinking. Phoenix, what if she's not the problem? Drake's eyes narrowed. What if Raven, protecting us from the real problem? Why did her voice return in training, of all places? Why there, in the quiet safety of Virginia Beach, where danger should have been locked oceans away? The team was running advanced long-range drills at the shooting range, their rifles steady, breath measured. For a moment, it was just routine, the rhythm of training, the reassurance of normalcy. Then came the voice they'd never forgotten. Your elevation's off by 2 minutes of angle. Gray froze mid-breath. The calm female tone slipped into his headset like it had always belonged there. Wind shifted since your last read. Adjust. For a beat, no one moved. Then Gray exhaled, adjusted his scope, fired. 5 rounds snapped into a perfect cluster. Too perfect. Drake's heart slammed against his ribs. Raven, his eyes swept the secure facility. Fences, armed guards, no one could have breached this perimeter, and yet her voice was here. Negative on position disclosure, she replied, as if answering his thoughts. Focus on fundamentals. Chief Gray, control your breathing. Petty Officer Vale, you're rushing encryption checks. Slow down. Phoenix, keep your head in the fight. Vale's fingers flew over his comms device, panic-laced with awe. Phoenix, she's inside our channel again. Not piggybacking. She's rewriting the encryption as we speak. This is decades ahead of us. Raven didn't just critique. She taught. Over the next hour, her voice guided them through adjustments so precise they felt like revelations. Wind is terrain-dependent. Don't measure only at your position, read the horizon. That shift 2 miles away. It's bending your shot before you even touch the trigger. Breathing is rhythm, not pause. Your body doesn't wait for you, so move with it, not against it. She wasn't just improving them. She was dismantling everything they thought they knew and rebuilding it sharper, cleaner, unshakable. Gray lowered his rifle, shaking his head. She's not teaching us tricks. She's teaching us things that don't even exist in doctrine. Fields, their medic, had been listening closely. When Raven's attention shifted, she began instructing him in trauma protocols, techniques he'd never heard before. Tourniquets are temporary. Think cellular repair. Think battlefield regeneration. Medical research is ahead of what they let you see. Fields' voice cracked softly. She's teaching me treatments I've only read about in classified journals. Vale, hands trembling on his gear, muttered, "She's not just watching. She's inside everything. She can see us, hear us, track us. She knows us better than we know ourselves." Finally, Drake's patience snapped. "Why?" His voice was raw, demanding. "Why us? Why now?" For the first time, Raven hesitated, and when she spoke, the tone carried something he hadn't expected. Not ice, not steel, bitterness. "Because the next time you walk into a trap, I might not be there." The words hit harder than any firefight. "You think Syria was an exception. It was. Your missions are being compromised by people who have access to your planning. Sometimes it's incompetence. Sometimes it's betrayal. Either way, you'll keep walking into death unless you learn to see it." Gray, weathered by decades in the field, asked the question aloud. "You're saying our own people are setting us up?" "I'm saying your enemy isn't always the one you're told to fight." The silence that followed felt heavier than the war itself. She continued, each word like a knife turning. "Do you know why I left official channels? Because I reported it once, and nothing happened. Because sometimes the problem sits at the same table as the solution." Drake clenched his fists. "Then who are you, Raven? What are you?" Her answer cut clean. "Former Army Ranger, discharged under circumstances that never happened. Current status, concerned citizen with skills no one wants me to have." Field swallowed hard. "You're not just rescuing us, you're recruiting us." And in the pause that followed, Raven didn't deny it. Instead, she started giving them tools. Secure dead-drop methods. Communication protocols that couldn't be intercepted. Techniques to cross-check intel outside official channels. Even subtle cues to spot when a briefing was compromised. Changes in wording, unnecessary reroutes, too many last-minute updates. "Use these methods," she said, "because the next time you may not have me." Gray leaned back, his gravel voice low. "She's not just saving us, she's preparing us." Vale's equipment lit up with one more shocking discovery. Phoenix, her comms gear records everything. Every compromised order, every betrayal, every voice. She's building a case file on our own system. Drake stared into the dusk sky above the range, listening to her voice fade. "What do you want from us, Raven?" Her answer lingered like a shadow. "I want you to survive long enough to see the truth, and when you see it, I want you to act." The line went dead. The team sat in silence, rifles cooling, hearts burning. Gray finally muttered the words none of them wanted to say. "We just got trained by a ghost, and now we have to decide if we trust her or the system that nearly killed us." Drake didn't answer. Not yet, because the decision was already forming in his chest, heavy and dangerous. And deep down, he knew the truth would break them before it saved them. Why did the briefing feel like a trap before it even began? The room was the same: white walls, projection screens, neat stacks of paper detailing routes and contingencies. The voices were the same, commanders with crisp words and clipped instructions. And yet, Phoenix Drake felt the wrongness in his gut the moment the first slide flickered on the screen. Convoy protection detail, Kurdistan, diplomatic transport through friendly territory. Routine, boring even, the kind of mission any SEAL team could walk blind. And still the air felt heavier than combat. Vale shifted beside him, scrolling through the electronic packet. "Phoenix, this doesn't line up." Drake gave him a look. Vale leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "They're routing us through zones that local news reports say have been pacified for 6 months. No hostiles, no recent incidents, but our intel packet claims high threat activity requiring maximum security." Gray grunted, flipping pages like they were knives. "Extraction window changed twice since yesterday, always later, always longer in the kill zone." Fields opened the med supply list, his brow furrowed. "Phoenix, they cut our allocations. Half the trauma gear we normally deploy with, for a mission they claim is high risk. That's not just sloppy, that's deliberate. The words Raven had drilled into them came flooding back. Look for inconsistencies. Question what doesn't fit. Drake's pulse quickened. He raised his hand. Sir, why the changes in extraction timeline? The briefer, a young intel officer, barely glanced at him. Operational adjustments, nothing significant. But Drake heard it in the voice, too dismissive, too rehearsed. And that's when the choice began pressing on him like a vice. Follow orders, or follow the voice of a ghost who had already saved them once. 2 nights later, they were wheels up. The convoy was already rolling when the unease grew claws. Armored SUVs marked with diplomatic flags, smiling contractors in civilian suits, humanitarian crates stacked in the trucks, too clean, too staged. Vale muttered into the comms. Phoenix, our Raven protocol crosschecks just flagged something. Those crates, they're listed as medical aid, but the manifests don't match. They're too heavy, wrong dimensions. Gray lifted a corner tarp at a checkpoint, eyes narrowing. These aren't bandages and syringes, night vision scopes, ammo, encrypted comms units, weapons-grade cargo disguised as aid. Drake felt his stomach sink. Raven had been right, again. Vale's voice cracked into the secure line, his tone sharp. Phoenix, their radios are modified. If we try to report, our transmission won't go anywhere. We've been wired not to speak. Then came the whisper, cold, calm, inevitable. Phoenix, your suspicions are correct. This convoy is not humanitarian. Those aren't diplomats. They're contractors with Crimson Tide. They're delivering weapons to Kurdish separatists, hostile groups. This is not American policy. This is corporate warfare. Raven's voice slid through their private encrypted channel like a lifeline. Field swallowed, staring at the crates. So we're not protecting peace. We're protecting arms dealers. Gray spat into the dust, using us as cover. Drake's voice was steady, but inside the ground was shifting. What's our play? Raven didn't hesitate. You do your job, you protect the convoy. But while you do, you gather evidence. Document every crate, every exchange, every word, record it, transmit it. Don't stop, because this is bigger than one mission. Vale adjusted the micro-recorders Raven had slipped into their gear during that surreal training session. Phoenix, we're live. Everything we see, everything we hear, it's being archived. And so, the mission became 2 missions. On the surface, disciplined SEALs guarding diplomats. Beneath it, silent witnesses gathering proof of treason. The deeper they rolled into Kurdistan, the more the mask slipped. Contractors spoke freely once they believed the SEALs were only there as muscle. Phase 1 delivery includes 50 encrypted comms systems, one contractor bragged to a Kurdish contact. Undetectable by NATO monitoring, perfect for coordinating attacks. Drake's blood ran cold. Vale caught it on recorder. Gray's scope tracked faces. These aren't officials. Half of them are wanted for bombings against civilians. Fields noted the medical crates, his voice low with disgust. They're not just selling weapons. They're selling the supplies to patch up the wounds those weapons cause. They profit both ways. By day 3, the mask was gone entirely. The Kurdish separatists tested their new toys in the open. Coordinated assaults against Turkish border posts. 17 soldiers killed, dozens wounded. And the SEALs, sworn brothers-in-arms of NATO, had been the silent escort delivering the very tools that slaughtered allies. Vale slammed his fist against his gear, whispering through the encrypted channel. Phoenix, Raven's right. We just helped arm the enemy. American-made weapons, serial numbers intact. They'll trace back straight to us. And then the truth dug even deeper. Raven's voice, colder now. Phoenix, we've traced comm intercepts. This network links directly to Admiral Knox Harper. He's been coordinating with Crimson Tide contractors for years, creating conflicts, fueling instability, generating contracts, billions in profit. Drake closed his eyes for half a second. Harper, a name he knew. A flag officer, trusted, respected, and now revealed as the architect of betrayal. The weight of it was suffocating. What if refusing means they send another team? Fields asked bitterly. Raven answered with steel. That's why you document, because one team refusing is disobedience. But evidence exposes the system. Evidence brings it down. By the time extraction neared, their devices were full. Audio of contractors planning attacks. Video of Kurdish fighters unloading American crates. Comm intercepts tying Harper's voice to the entire scheme. It was enough to burn the world open. Enough to either save them or damn them forever. As the Blackhawk pulled them out, Vale uploaded the package to Raven's secure channels. The files split, encrypted, spread across networks no admiral could touch. Evidence transmitted, Vale said, his voice breaking. Drake asked the question no one wanted answered. Now what? Raven's reply was both promise and warning. Now you've crossed the line, and once you cross it, Phoenix, they will never stop hunting you. Drake looked at his men, gray, stone-faced but loyal. Vale, trembling from the adrenaline of betrayal. Fields, angry enough to burn the whole system down. And himself, the commander who had just led his team into war against their own chain of command. In the distance, the convoy continued rolling. Weapons, lies, blood. And Drake knew one thing with bone-deep certainty. The war wasn't just out there anymore. The war was inside. Why did the world look the same when everything had already changed? The ocean still crashed against the Virginia shore. Joggers still ran along the beach. Kids still laughed as waves chased their feet. And yet, for Phoenix Drake, nothing about the world was innocent anymore. They had delivered evidence that should have shaken the Pentagon. Audio tapes, video feeds, proof that American admirals were feeding wars for profit. Vale had uploaded it through Raven's channels, spread so wide it couldn't simply vanish. And yet the silence after was deafening. No investigations, no headlines, no official acknowledgement. Instead, whispers. Clearances revoked, sudden errors in pay systems, briefings scheduled then canceled, and always eyes that followed them on base, at home, even in places where no one should have known their names. It didn't take long for the whispers to become orders. At the chow hall, a young lieutenant passed Drake and muttered under his breath, "Rogue, traitor." In the gym, contractors he didn't know stood too close, watching without blinking. Vale's laptop lit up with system alerts. "Phoenix, someone's inside my comms. Not Raven, them. They're rewriting logs to make it look like we leaked to the press." Gray's gravel voice rumbled. "They're turning the board against us." And then the mission orders came. A sealed packet, official insignia, operation name redacted, deployment, immediate, destination, Afghanistan. Drake opened it in silence, and his heart sank. It wasn't a mission order, it was a death sentence. The team was assigned to clear a mountain compound, with no intel, no drone coverage, and a note about limited extraction assets. Field's face went pale. "Phoenix, they're sending us into the grinder, exactly like Syria, but this time, no Raven." But Raven was listening. That night her voice crackled into their private channel. "Phoenix, abort. This isn't a mission, it's a purge. They're tying up loose ends." Vale stared at the packet, voice tight with fear. "Phoenix, if we refuse, they'll charge us. Desertion, treason. They'll bury us without firing a shot." Drake closed his eyes, his voice low. "If we go, we die. If we don't, we disappear another way. What's left?" The answer came softer than any bullet, Raven's voice. "You fight on a different field." And then the world broke open. At 300, the SEALs' barracks erupted in alarms. Gunfire, smoke, not enemy fire but American rounds. Teams they recognized, operators they'd trained with, storming their quarters with kill orders in their eyes. Gray tackled Fields down, dragging him behind overturned bunks. "Friendly fire, my ass." Vale screamed into his comms. "Phoenix, they've marked us hostile on base net. Every unit here thinks we're compromised insurgents." The betrayal was absolute. Their brothers-in-arms were hunting them in their own home. And then Raven struck. Lights died across the base. Power surged, then cut. A female voice hijacked the loudspeakers, calm, ruthless. "Unauthorized engagement detected. Cease fire immediately." Confusion rippled through the gunmen. In the seconds of hesitation, Raven opened every locked door, every checkpoint. She wasn't on base, but her presence was everywhere, in their radios, in their optics, in their systems. Phoenix moved now, vehicle waiting south perimeter. Drake didn't think. He led his men into the chaos, sprinting past comrades who couldn't decide if they should shoot or stand down. The base was a storm of confusion, alarms wailing against Raven's voice cutting through. At the perimeter, headlights flashed once. A battered civilian truck sat waiting, engine purring. Gray raised his rifle. "This feels too clean." Raven's voice pressed into their earpieces. "It's not clean, it's survival, get in." They piled into the truck, weapons ready. The driver didn't turn, didn't speak. Just a scarf pulled up high, eyes hidden. Vale whispered, "Is this?" The driver spoke, female, low, certain. "Yes." For the first time, Raven wasn't just a voice. She was flesh and blood. Her hands gripped the wheel with quiet force as she gunned the engine and tore them out of the gate. Alarms chased them. Bullets cracked the windshield. But her driving was as surgical as her shooting, weaving through spikes, avoiding roadblocks, knowing exactly when to swerve before they appeared. Field stared, disbelief written all over him. "She's real." Raven didn't look back. "Keep your heads down." Only when the base lights vanished in the rearview mirror did she finally speak more than a sentence. "You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. From here on, you're not SEALs, not officially, you're targets, and you only live if you stop playing by their rules." Gray's jaw clenched. "And what rules do you suggest?" Her eyes flicked to him through the mirror, cold, determined. "Mine." They drove for hours, switching vehicles 3 times. By dawn, they were in an abandoned safe house in the backwoods of North Carolina. Old maps on the walls, rusted equipment scattered across the floor. Only then did Raven pull down the scarf. A face that carried scars not from vanity but survival, mid-30s, eyes sharp enough to cut. Field spoke first, almost whispering, "Who are you really?" She met his gaze without flinching. "I told you, former Army Ranger, sniper, operative, but what I didn't tell you," her voice faltered for the first time, carrying something heavier than steel, "is that I was one of you. I was sent into a mission just like Syria, set up, betrayed. My team didn't make it out. I did, barely, and I learned the truth the hard way." Drake studied her, the scars, the bitterness, the absolute certainty in her tone. "You've been fighting this war alone." Her eyes burned. "Not anymore." Silence fell like judgment. They were no longer just soldiers. They were witnesses, fugitives, and now, whether they wanted it or not, allies of the ghost who had saved them twice. Vale finally broke it, his voice trembling. "So what now? What's the plan?" Raven leaned forward, her words deliberate, dangerous. "Now we stop surviving, and we start exposing them." But even as she said it, the team felt the weight of what had just begun. Because taking on enemies out there was one thing, taking on enemies in their own uniform, that was something else entirely. And for the first time, Phoenix Drake understood why Raven had stayed in the shadows. Because this war was no longer about nations. It was about truth. And truth was the most dangerous battlefield of all. Why did silence feel heavier when you chose it? The safe house was quiet, too quiet. No helicopters, no gunfire, no commands shouted across radios. Just stillness, broken only by the creak of floorboards and the faint hum of Vale's laptop. Phoenix Drake sat with his rifle across his knees, staring at nothing. He was a soldier without orders, a commander without a mission, and yet the war had never felt so close. Gray cleaned his weapon methodically in the corner, every scrape of the rag like the rhythm of inevitability. Fields wrote in a battered notebook, recording medical notes that looked more like confessions. Vale muttered curses under his breath as code streamed across his screen. And Raven moved like a shadow between them, always watching, always working. Finally, Vale slammed his laptop shut. Got it, Phoenix, Raven was right. Admiral Harper's been moving funds through a web of contractors. Crimson Tide is just the front. He's tied into 3 shell corporations, all with ties to weapons shipments flagged as humanitarian aid. He's laundering billions, literal billions. Gray spat on the floor. And those billions buy more bullets, more wars, more dead kids in places we never even hear about. Fields looked up from his notebook, his voice cracked. So what are we supposed to do? Expose him. They'll erase it before it ever sees daylight. Raven leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Her voice was steady, but there was a weight behind it. You don't just expose corruption, you bleed it. You cut it until it has no choice but to scream. Drake looked at her, meaning what? Her eyes locked onto his. Meaning we go after his lifelines, the men and women who move his money, the warehouses that hide his cargo, the comm relays that carry his lies. Piece by piece, we burn his house down. Gray chuckled darkly. Finally, a war worth fighting. Vale hesitated. But Phoenix, this means targeting Americans, contractors, soldiers under orders, people who think they're serving the flag, not lining Harper's pockets. The silence after that felt like judgment. Drake's voice was low, firm. We've always followed the flag. Maybe it's time we follow the truth. And so it began. Their first strike wasn't with bullets, it was with light. Vale, guided by Raven's code, broke into Harper's shadow network, bank records, offshore accounts, payments to contractors disguised as training stipends. They traced every transfer, every wire, every hidden trail. At dawn, anonymous leaks hit global news outlets. American weapons delivered to separatists. Photos, serial numbers, voices, proof. For the first time, the system flinched. But Harper didn't rise to the bait, he struck back. Within hours, the seals were plastered across secure military channels. Rogue unit, highly dangerous, elimination authorized. Drake read the words in silence. His own face, his brother's faces, marked as enemies of the state. Gray grunted, hell of a promotion. Raven didn't laugh. This is how they play, discredit first, destroy second. And destroy they tried. 2 nights later, a kill team hit the safe house. Not local police, not contractors, special operators, men just like them. Brothers once, enemies now. The fight was brutal, close quarters, gunfire in the dark, knives flashing, fists breaking bone. Drake remembered the sound of one operator gasping his last breath, the look of betrayal in his eyes. They survived barely. But in the silence after, Fields sat against the wall, blood on his hands that wasn't all his. His voice broke. How do we keep doing this, killing our own? We're not soldiers anymore. We're ghosts. Raven crouched beside him, her eyes softer than steel. Sometimes ghosts are the only ones who can tell the truth, because the living are too afraid. Her words didn't heal him, but they kept him moving. Strike after strike followed. They intercepted a convoy outside Atlanta, crates marked as communications gear, inside filled with explosives. They hacked a warehouse in Romania, exposing shipments bound for insurgent groups. They hit a contractor in Istanbul, stealing drives loaded with Harper's voice, his orders, his signatures. And each time, they left a trail of evidence too loud to ignore. The world began to whisper. News anchors questioned. Congress murmured. Allies demanded answers. But Harper's grip was strong. He silenced what he could. He buried files. He killed stories. And so Raven pushed harder. Phoenix, the deeper we go, the dirtier it gets. Harper's not alone. He's got allies in defense, in intelligence, even in Congress. Men who profit from endless war. If we keep pulling, we might bring down more than just him. Drake stared at her, the weight pressing harder than his gear ever had. Then we pull. But in the shadows of their victories, cracks began to form. Fields drank more, shook harder after every fight. He stitched wounds with hands that trembled, his voice bitter. I signed up to save lives, not take American ones. Vale grew thinner, his eyes sunken from nights of coding without sleep. Every time I log in, I see them coming. I feel them hunting me. One day I'll slip, and when I do, they'll erase me. Even Gray, solid, unshakable Gray, grew quieter. His humor dulled, his eyes darker. Killing strangers was easy. Killing brothers, that's a weight I never trained for. And Drake himself, he felt it tearing inside. The soldier who followed orders, the leader who protected his men, the man who knew every bullet they fired at their own left another scar on souls already bleeding. One night when silence pressed too heavy, he found Raven outside, watching the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. She didn't look at him. "Every day." "Then why keep going?" Finally she turned. Her eyes weren't steel then, they were fire. "Because regret doesn't change the truth, and the truth doesn't stop just because we're tired." The words cut into him, not because they were comforting, but because they were. By the time autumn came, they had dismantled half of Harper's network. Dozens of contractors exposed, billions frozen in offshore accounts, whistleblowers stepping forward, emboldened by the ghost war Raven had started. But Harper was still standing, untouchable, smiling on TV, praising our men in uniform even as he signed their death warrants in secret. And the SEALs knew what that smile meant. He wasn't finished. Neither were they. Why do enemies always know where to hurt you most? It began with silence, not on the battlefield, at home. Gray's daughter stopped answering his calls. His wife's phone disconnected. He flew back to Virginia in disguise, only to find their house empty, furniture gone, the mailbox stuffed with final notice bills. His family had been erased. Field's brother, a firefighter in Boston, was suddenly under investigation for terrorism financing. His name dragged across the news, his career torched by accusations that didn't exist. Vale's parents woke one night to their home surrounded by unmarked SUVs. Agents tore through everything, seizing laptops, photos, even his childhood baseball glove. No warrant, no explanation, just intimidation. And Drake came home to an empty lot. His house, the house he'd built on Navy paychecks and long deployments, was ash. Fire reports said electrical failure. He knew better. Raven told them the truth none of them wanted. Harper's moving to erase you, not just as soldiers, as men, as fathers, as sons, as human beings. He wants you gone so completely that even memory won't find you. Gray sat in the safe house that night, a bottle gripped like a lifeline, rage etched into his every line. "He can kill me, fine, but he touches my family," his voice broke, the fury choking him. "He just signed his death warrant." Field slammed his notebook shut, trembling. "This isn't war anymore. This is annihilation. We're fighting ghosts, shadows, and the more we hit, the harder they erase us." Vale looked up from his laptop, eyes bloodshot. "Phoenix, they're not just erasing us. They're rewriting us. Look." He spun the screen around. Official Navy logs, SEAL team records, only they were different. Their names were marked as dishonorably discharged. Missions they had never botched were listed as failures. Commendations stripped. Photos doctored. Gray muttered, They're rewriting our legacy before we're even dead. And in that moment, Drake felt the kind of rage that burned colder than fire. We're not just fighting for survival anymore, he said. We're fighting to exist. The next weeks were brutal. Harper's network didn't send kill teams now, they sent professionals. Men who made operators look sloppy. The SEALs were hunted in alleys, ambushed in cities, tracked across borders. In Berlin, a sniper round missed Fields by inches, tearing the brick beside his skull. In Istanbul, Vale barely jammed a signal in time to stop a drone strike aimed at their car. In Virginia, Gray found a tracker sewn into his own jacket, hidden so perfectly it felt like a message. We see you always. And yet through it all, Raven held them together. She taught them how to disappear, how to build new identities, how to survive in the cracks between governments. Stop thinking like soldiers, she told them. Soldiers fight for orders, you fight for truth. Ghosts don't win battles, ghosts win wars. But even ghosts have breaking points. One night Fields snapped. He sat in the corner of the safe house, his hands shaking as he loaded and reloaded the same magazine, over and over. His voice was hollow. I can't keep stitching wounds I helped cause. I can't watch us kill men who used to wear the same uniform. I can't carry this anymore. Drake crouched beside him, gripping his shoulder. Doc, you've carried us this far, we need you. Fields' eyes filled with tears. What if I don't want to be needed anymore? The silence was heavy. No one had an answer, not even Raven. The next morning, Fields was gone, his gear left behind. His notebook open on the table, a single line scrawled across the last page. I wanted to save lives. Somewhere along the way, I lost mine. The team searched. Raven traced what signals she could, but Fields was gone, vanished into the same shadows they had once dragged Raven from. Gray slammed his fist into the wall, leaving blood on the plaster. We're falling apart, Phoenix, piece by piece, and Harper's laughing while we bleed ourselves dry. Drake stood silent at the window, staring at the dawn breaking through broken glass. He felt the truth deep in his bones. Gray was right. Harper wasn't just trying to kill them. He was trying to make them destroy themselves. That night, Raven sat across from Drake. For the first time, she looked tired, truly tired. The fire in her eyes was dimmer, the lines of her scars sharper in the low light. You asked me once if I regret it, she said softly. Drake nodded. Her voice wavered. I regret surviving when my team didn't. I regret believing I could fix a system that was built to break us. But what I don't regret, her eyes met his, fierce, unyielding, is fighting anyway, because even if we lose, someone has to show the world the truth was worth dying for. Drake swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking deep. The team was down a brother, their families erased, their names poisoned, and yet in that broken safe house he realized something. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They weren't even fugitives. They were a warning. And warnings weren't meant to survive. They were meant to be remembered. When dawn broke again, Drake gathered Gray and Vale. His voice was calm, almost too calm. Harper thinks he can erase us, so we're going to do the opposite. We're going to make ourselves louder than he can silence. We're going to hit him where he thinks he's untouchable, his public face, his fortress, his lies, and we're going to show the world what he really is. Vale's voice trembled. Phoenix, that's suicide. Gray cracked a broken smile. Maybe, but hell, if we're going down, we're taking him with us. Raven said nothing. She just handed Drake a drive, her last ace. Everything I've collected, voices, faces, orders, proof, it's all here. But getting it out means stepping into the light, no more shadows. Drake closed his hand around it, the weight heavier than any weapon he'd ever carried. And in that moment, the decision was made. They would stop running. They would stand. Even if it killed them. Why do the last steps always feel the heaviest? Phoenix Drake stood in the abandoned hangar, the early dawn leaking through shattered windows. dust swirling like ghosts in the air. On the table in front of him sat the drive Raven had given him, a piece of plastic and metal, small enough to fit in his hand, yet heavy enough to tip the scales of war. Gray checked his rifle with steady hands, though his eyes betrayed the storm inside him. Vale paced like a caged animal, muttering code and prayers in the same breath. Raven leaned against the wall, her scarred face lit by the faint glow of her laptop as she synced the drive with networks across the world. "This is it," she said softly. "We put this into the right hands and Harper's empire starts to burn." Drake nodded. "And if we fail?" Her eyes lifted, cold, unyielding. "Then we vanish and the world forgets us, but at least we go down knowing the truth had a chance." The plan was madness. It had to be. They weren't just leaking files anymore. This time, they were going straight into Harper's fortress, the secure headquarters where he operated with impunity. The drive would only matter if they transmitted it from inside his own system. If the world saw not just files stolen by ghosts, but truth ripped from Harper's own veins. It was suicide, they all knew it, and still no one flinched. Night fell like judgment when they moved. Disguises, forged IDs, stolen access codes. Raven guided them through checkpoints with uncanny precision, her voice a thread pulling them through the labyrinth. Camera blind in 3, 2, 1, move. Guard rotation delayed 30 seconds, use it. Don't breathe, drone overhead. Every step was a razor's edge. One mistake and the walls would close forever. Inside the heart of the building, the air was colder, sterile, and there he was. Admiral Knox Harper, standing tall, ribbons on his chest, silver hair gleaming beneath fluorescent light, smiling, always smiling. "Phoenix Drake," Harper said, his voice rich with false warmth. "I was wondering when you'd stop hiding." Gray raised his rifle. "Cut the act, Knox. We've got you dead to rights." Harper chuckled. "Do you? Or do you have doctored files planted by a ghost who doesn't even exist? Tell me, how long will the world believe fugitives over a decorated admiral?" Vale stepped forward, shaking with fury. "We've got your voice, your orders, your damn signature. You can't bury this one." Harper's eyes flicked to Raven. For the first time, his smile faltered. "And you, still alive? I thought we fixed that mistake years ago." Raven's jaw tightened. "You didn't fix me, you forged me." The tension was a held breath, ready to shatter. Drake placed the drive on Harper's desk, his voice low, steady. "This isn't about us anymore. This is about the men you sent to die, the families you ruined, the wars you fed for profit. We're not ghosts, we're witnesses, and today the world hears us." He jammed the drive into Harper's own console. Vale's fingers flew, unlocking layers of encryption. Raven guided him, her voice sharp, precise. "Bypass port lock, force relay, override checksum. Now upload." Alarms wailed. Security flooded the halls. Gunfire cracked against reinforced glass. Gray roared, unleashing fire down the corridor. "Move, Vale, they'll breach in 30. Vale's voice broke with desperation. "Almost there, just a few more seconds." Raven fired from the doorway, every shot surgical. "Stay focused. This is bigger than surviving." Drake stood over the console, staring at Harper. The Admiral's smile had returned, even as chaos swallowed the building. "You think this changes anything?" Harper sneered. "Men like me don't fall, we outlast, we adapt. You'll die here and I'll still be shaking hands on Capitol Hill tomorrow." Drake's voice was quiet, but it carried. "Not this time." The console beeped, upload complete. Across the world, screens lit up with files, news stations, secure servers, allies, enemies, every secret laid bare. Harper's empire stripped naked before the eyes of millions. Harper's smile finally cracked. Security burst through the doors. Gunfire tore the air. Glass shattered. The world slowed to heartbeats and smoke. Gray went down first, rounds tearing into him as he held the line, his last shout more defiance than pain. Make it count, Phoenix. Vale slammed the laptop shut, shoving the final burst of code into the system. A round caught him in the chest. He fell, gasping, whispering through blood. Tell them we tried. Drake and Raven dragged him back, firing blind into the storm. But there were too many, always too many. Raven's eyes met Drake. No fear, just fire. Go, finish it. Drake shook his head. Not without you. She pressed a small device into his hand, a trigger, her last contingency. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Before he could argue, she turned back to the doorway, her rifle spitting fury, her body a shield. Drake stumbled into the stairwell, the building quaking with alarms. Behind him, Raven's fire slowed, then stopped. And then light. The charges she had planted tore through the corridors. Flames roared. The building collapsed into itself, swallowing Harper, his empire, his lies. The files were already free, the truth already alive. Drake staggered into the night, broken, burned, but breathing, alone. For days he wandered. No gray, no Vale, no fields, no Raven, just silence. Until the screens lit up. Congress hearings, trials, headlines screaming betrayal and treason. Harper's face dragged through the mud of truth he had tried so hard to bury. Allies demanding justice. Families of fallen soldiers speaking with rage and grief. And among the footage, one grainy clip. A lone figure, scarred and unbroken, standing in the flames before vanishing into smoke. Raven. No one knew her name. No one knew her past. But the world whispered her story. The ghost who saved SEALs, who fought the system, who vanished into fire. Phoenix Drake watched from the shadows, unseen, unheard. His men were gone, his life erased, but the truth had survived. And that was enough. Because sometimes victories aren't medals. Sometimes they're just memories, proof that you didn't die for nothing. He whispered into the empty night, a vow only the wind could hear. They'll remember you, all of you, always. The stars didn't answer, the night didn't care. But somewhere, deep inside the silence, he felt it. Ghosts don't die, they become the truth. And the truth had finally spoken.